President Zelensky has accused NATO of weakness and uncertainty over the reluctance of some members to set a timetable for Ukraine to join the military alliance. NATO leaders meeting in Lithuania have agreed that Ukraine can join, but only when certain conditions are met. NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said the alliance had never sent a stronger political and practical message about Ukraine's path to membership, but made clear it could not join while it was at war with Russia. Our Europe editor Katya Adler sent this report from the summit in Vilnius.
Disappointed Volodymyr Zelensky put on a brave face today for supporters in the Lithuanian capital.
I came here today believing in partners, in a NATO that does not waste time. Ukraine will make NATO stronger. NATO will make Ukraine safer.
A very different tone from his tweet earlier in the day, when he blasted the military alliance as absurd and weak for not agreeing a timetable for Kyiv to join the club. As confirmed by NATO's Secretary-General.
The invitation will be issued when conditions are met.
This is not the picture of absolute unity NATO was hoping for at its summit, which leaders here know Vladimir Putin is watching closely from Moscow. This is Ukraine today, ravaged by war a year and a half into Russia's full-scale invasion, fighting to keep its independence and defend wider European security, it says. Arriving in Vilnius for the NATO summit, the Prime Minister said all allies should up defence spending.
Priorities for this summit are to strengthen that alliance so that we can face the threats of the future and protect ourselves adequately against them, but also to continue supporting Ukraine.
The government has announced a big increase in production of NATO standard artillery shells in the UK. Ukraine needs the tools to push Russia back. Kyiv is grateful, but wants more. What Ukraine wants is a seat at NATO's table, membership of the club. And why? Because of NATO's mutual defence clause, which means an attack against one member is seen as an attack against all of them. After a ceasefire, says Kyiv, that's the way to stop Moscow ever thinking of invading again. But here, NATO allies are divided. Baltic states, like Lithuania, hosting today's summit, border Russia and fear it. Ukraine should join NATO sooner rather than later, they all say.
We also owe it to the Ukrainians because they are fighting there so that the British, Estonians, Americans don't have to fight with Russia.
But the US and Germany are more hesitant. They fear direct conflict with Russia if Ukraine joins NATO anytime soon.
This is not a competition who's at what moment at what point. The most important thing is that we are all increasing our military support for Ukraine.
Tonight, Ukraine's president was given a seat at NATO's table, for dinner at least. The spat over membership aside, this relationship is close. Katya Adler, BBC News, Vilnius.
Let's speak now to our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera, who's in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, for us. And Gordon, what will be the reaction in Ukraine to the summit, and what does it mean for the war?
Well, Ukraine has been knocking at NATO's door for years now, asking to join. And what you heard today was President Zelensky effectively pounding on it, asking to be let in on his way to the summit, saying it would be absurd not to be given a timetable. Now, that would appear to be a way of putting some last-minute pressure on those NATO leaders, but he didn't get what he wanted. There was a step forward, but no absolute commitment. Now, I think Ukraine is being careful not to sound too disappointed or too angry. After all, they need NATO. They need that continued supply of weapons from NATO for their counter-offensive. But weapons are not enough, they believe. They need the kind of security guarantees they could get from NATO. They're worried about ambiguity. One Ukrainian MP said to me, Russia understands the language of force. What they heard from that NATO statement today was the language of hesitation. And so I think the concern is that the weapons and the patience of allies could run dry, and that the only thing that will protect Ukraine is not knocking at the door, but being let into the NATO club.